I know you do.
Smoke on your pipe and put that in.
My name is Alberto Justiniano, and I'm the artistic director of Teatro de Pueblo. We're a local Latino professional theater located in the Westside, just across the bridge here. And we've been around for about 25 years, so we're really excited about being here. And the reason I'm here is because we are collaborating with the Ordway on bringing and working with Westside Story, as well as with In the Heights, which will be in September of this year. So we're developing an equitable collaboration between a small institution and the larger institutions like the Ordway. So it's an experiment. We'll see where it leads. So we're really excited. But as part of that is that we create these periphery events that really lift community and put the play into context.
I want to thank the Ordway for creating this opportunity of the community dialogue, and especially Teatro del Pueblo and the collaboration of the Ordway and Teatro del Pueblo in doing things like ensuring that Westside Story, a musical that is largely about a Puerto Rican community, is cast with, for example, Latinos. Of course, they're following the venerable example of West Side Story, the film, which starred, the lioness and great Puerto Rican actress of stage and screen, Natalie Wood. For the Ordway Theater audience, I would just say we'll be giving a talk about Puerto Rico and the United States through the prism of West Side Story. West Side Story for Puerto Ricans, there's a somewhat ambivalent relationship that a lot of us have to West Side Story. And when you grow up, like I did, when you grow up Puerto Rican and gay, it is easy to develop a love-hate relationship to West Side Story. Like, it's a little bit problematic, but it's a musical. And that ambivalence, I would say, is not restricted to me at all. A lot of Puerto Ricans feel this, and I guess I would summarize that love-hate relationship in this way. Like, while we can talk to you, non-Puerto Ricans, all about how much we love Rita Moreno, and she was the first Puerto Rican to win an Oscar, and the movie really put her and Puerto Ricans on the map. Well, we can tell you all that. If you sing the lyrics of that song, America, to us, we'll cut you. I'm kidding, we won't cut you. That is super racist. Do not, get that out of your head. And, this experience of the song America in particular, right, is, I think I can tell you about, years ago, when I did I did research, and the original script of West Side Story, actually, that iconic dance, that iconic, it's that moment of America is just iconic of Broadway stage and of film, right? That it was originally not staged as boys versus girls. The boys and the girls, they do have this conversation about the boys loving Puerto Rico and the girls loving the United States, but then the boys go off to fight the Jets or something, and then the girls stay behind, and there's one girl who loves Puerto Rico and wants to go back to Puerto Rico. Her name is Rosalia, and the stage directions describe her as she is not too bright. And so for someone who raised on the island, the song, you all know the lyrics, right? Puerto Rico, my heart's devotion, and let it sink back in the ocean. Ambivalence, right? So, but that's that musical number, that very iconic musical number. The other thing to know about that is that Puerto Ricans, we don't dance like that. And not just like we don't break into dance, no one does that, but that the style of dance of that very iconic number is very flamenco inspired of Spain, and that's just not how traditional folkloric dances in Puerto Rico are danced. And I'll say more about that later. But when thinking about what I would talk about with you here today, I thought, challenge yourself. Like what did West Side Story get right? What did this song, America, get right? And I would say that it's this, that the song America, it is about the tension, the push and pull that Puerto Ricans many feel between the island and the mainland. It's a push and pull that Puerto Ricans have felt for decades. For decades, there has been a migration to the U.S. since the decade before West Side Story was first written and first performed. And that nostalgia for Puerto Rico, that ambivalent relationship to the United States that many Puerto Ricans feel, I think is at the core of Puerto Rican identity. And I think it adds a lot to your understanding of West Side Story, of what it's about. And so to help provide that context, I thought let's go back in time a little bit and talk about Puerto Rico. And what I thought I'd do is, rather than lecture you on the history and culture of Puerto Rico, I thought I'd instead give you a quiz on your knowledge of Puerto Rico. Are you game? No. So our first question is, Columbus discovered Puerto Rico in what year? It is a trick question because Columbus didn't discover Puerto Rico. Now, in 1493, the poor hapless Taino Indians must have come upon an incredible sight. Ships arriving from Europe, one of them carrying a European with a penchant for naming things that already had names. Columbus named the island of Puerto Rico San Juan Bautista. That was its first name, and the Europeans, always in search of gold, called the port of San Juan Rich Port, Puerto Rico, and eventually those two names were reversed. The Taino Indians had lived there, the Arawaks had lived there for over 2,000 years, and they called the island Borinquen, Boriquen or Borinquen. What racial group do Puerto Ricans belong to? And Minnesotans, does this one make you a little uncomfortable? That is correct. It is a trick question. We are not a race. We are, if you go to the Puerto Rico tourism website, or if you speak to any Puerto Ricans, people will say, we are a mix of cultures. We are a mix of indigenous, European, and African cultures. And now that description, of course, it elides a lot. There's a lot of erasures in that history. For example, there is no surviving indigenous culture of Puerto Rico, but genetic studies show that I think it's over 60% of Puerto Ricans carry the genes of the native peoples of the Americas. And many Puerto Rican writers of Puerto Rican identity, have stressed that sometimes the Puerto Rican penchant for emphasizing our indigenous roots is a way of sort of downplaying our African roots. But yes, indeed, we are this sort of cultural blend and genetic mix. And in fact, there is a geneticist at the University of California, Berkeley, named Leor Pactor, who did a study of human genetics worldwide. And he decided that the perfect human being is a Puerto Rican. This is true, Google it. And some of you may be thinking, well, that's just crazy. There's no such thing as a perfect human being. And to that I say, science. But in Puerto Rico, if anyone asserts that they are white, purely white, they might hear this expression. People will say, "Y tu abuela dónde está?" And your grandmother, where is she? Because people, like anyone who is bothering to assert their whiteness that much is probably hiding something. Because we are this mix, and people are proud of this mix, and so much of our music and culture is based in especially the West African cultures, and so. I said flamenco dance is not sort of a traditional dance. The bomba en plena, and this is a traditional folkloric dancer. The bomba en plena later in the United States, musicians working with jazz artists and such, it was in New York that salsa was born. And so the dance that you know as salsa comes out of those African roots and was actually created in the United States. That might be sort of something one might see if America were danced not as flamenco, but in a more Puerto Rican style. Next question. In what year did Puerto Ricans petition the United States to become American citizens? This is also a trick question. It never happened. However, in 1917, in fact, it's the 100th anniversary of the Jones Act of 1917, passed by U.S. Congress, which made Puerto Ricans into U.S. citizens. Interesting note, it actually this law was passed over the objections of the only elected body on the island. Soon after we were made American citizens, a few short months later, Puerto Rican men were drafted into World War I. We were assured that was just a coincidence. But Puerto Ricans, in fact, have served in every war since then. I grew up on a U.S. Army base in Puerto Rico. My father served in the Army and is a Vietnam veteran. He served 2 tours of duty there. It's an important part of the economy of the island, and pretty much everyone, especially working class people in Puerto Rico, know someone who has served in the Army. Puerto Rico is best described as, this one is multiple choice, a nation, B, a colony, C, a territory, or D, a commonwealth. The answer is, it depends, it depends who you ask and how you ask the question. Puerto Rico, so from 1898, from the Spanish-American War until 1948, Puerto Rico was governed as a fairly traditional colony by the United States. And meaning that the U.S. would appoint governors to govern the island. And it was not until 1948 until a Puerto Rican was appointed to be governor of Puerto Rico. And in 1952, the island held its first elections and elected a governor. And that first governor was Luis Muñoz Marín. And Luis Muñoz Marín forged this status that we have had to this day, which in Spanish is called Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico, Free Associated State of Puerto Rico. In English, it's called the Commonwealth, so it depends on, if you ask in English, it's Commonwealth. In Spanish, Estado Libre Asociado, which again is Free Associated State, which we really kind of aren't really. Next question, what political status do Puerto Ricans prefer? Statehood, Commonwealth, or independence? I've scared you from wanting to answer now. The answer, esa pregunta es tricky. It's not a trick question, but it is a tricky one. Puerto Ricans are actually incredibly divided on the question of the political status of the island. Every time there has been a status referendum about Puerto Rico about the status of the island over the years, the population has been pretty evenly divided almost between those who want statehood, full integration into the United States, and those who prefer the Commonwealth status, the status quo. Independence has only ever pulled up to about 5%. Now, one of the ironies of the political status of the island is that whenever a status referendum happens, no matter how Puerto Ricans vote, it's not self-executing. The Congress of the United States would have to, like if Puerto Ricans decided to, voted to be a state, we wouldn't automatically become a state. Congress would have to approve it. Same with independence, which has led some to say when there are status referenda on the island that they are really nothing but a beauty contest. Which brings us to our next important question. How many times has Puerto Rico won the Miss Universe pageant? Yes, we are very, very proud of our Miss Universes, 5. The only country, there are 2 countries that have won more, one of them being Venezuela, but it's unfair. Their economy is entirely oil and beauty, I swear. And Puerto Rico has won 5 Miss Universes, and when we win a Miss Universe, the island shuts down. When Miss Universe comes back, there are parades. It's a big, big deal. Our next question is a role play. Pretend it's 1898 and you're white. For some of you, it's more of a stretch than others. American white. Why might you have heard of Puerto Rico? The Spanish-American War, correct, yes. The Spanish-American War, at the end of that war, Spain ceded Puerto Rico and the Philippines to the US. And Cuba was put on a path to independence. It took a while to get there. You might also have heard of Puerto Rico because the Spanish-American War birthed this whole genre of literature called our new possessions literature. There are many, many books like this. I own a collection. This is one of mine. And in these books, what they did was to teach you, the white American public, and yes, I know you're not all white. This is a role play. Teach you about the people of your new possessions, these new islands. Congratulations, America. It's a baby empire. Next role play. Pretend it's 1958 and you're white still. Why might you have heard of Puerto Rico? Huh? So what was that? Westside Story? Not yet, we're getting there. If you were a subscriber to Time magazine, you might have seen this on the cover. Luis Muñoz Marin, remember from our previous lesson, right? The first Puerto Rican elected governor of the island. And you'll see at the top it says Democracy's Laboratory in Latin America. Because here's what role Puerto Rico played in the United States imagination and the United States political project. Puerto Rico was democracy's laboratory because at the time, the world, there were big global debates about the future, especially of third world countries. Would you follow a path of socialism, communism, or of capitalism? And the United States set out to show that Puerto Rico would be the path for the rest of Latin America, to show that capitalism is the way to go. And the way they did that was through, you see that on his left there's a boot there? Operation Bootstrap was a program of the Puerto Rican government and the US government to industrialize the island. So it meant tax breaks for US corporations to go to Puerto Rico, and it also meant that you had to spread the wealth on the island. You had to have, people needed to be better off because there was a lot of poverty. So Democracy's Laboratory in Latin America was about ensuring that Puerto Ricans could become successful. And to do that, you had to have less population, was the theory. And so one of the things that the US government did was to subsidize migration of Puerto Ricans to the US. So in the 40s, late 40s and in the 50s, so before Westside Story was written, suddenly there was an influx of Puerto Ricans in New York. And so yes, there were lots of Americans who were like, why are there suddenly all these Puerto Ricans here? Now you know the answer. They were paid by the US government to move to New York, subsidize their travel. And so now we can do a West Side Story question. You know the last line of that song, when the boys say, they're gonna go back home, and they say, everyone there will give big cheer. And what is the response that Anita gives? Everyone there will have moved here. Yes, which is, I think, a little bit of showing the anxiety that maybe it caused in some folks, this large number of Puerto Ricans. The migration has been continuous, and in recent years, in fact, 2016 was a banner year for migration outside of the island because the island has a real financial crisis, economic crisis. There are now more Puerto Ricans in the United States than on the island. That's been true for many years. And so that's why you have me. Our last role play question, pretend it's 1961 and you're white. How might you have heard of Puerto Rico? Now, exactly. West Side Story, it comes full circle, right? And the ambivalence that Puerto Ricans, or the tension, this push-pull between Puerto Rico and the United States is very real for us on the island. Nostalgia is very real on for Puerto Ricans. And even Puerto Ricans who have maybe only once ever visited the island, like many have a real sense of that as a place of identity. Like, anywhere across the globe where you might find Puerto Ricans like late at night after a bout of drinking, Puerto Ricans will gather together and sing a song, and not just any song, a very particular song, a song of nostalgia. It is called En Mi Viejo San Juan. And Mi Viejo San Juan tells the story of a man who left Puerto Rico for colder climes, and he longs to return to the island before he dies. And the verse of the song says, Adiós, 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 Borinquen querida, tierra de mi amor. He wants to return. He says, pero un día volveré a buscar mi querer, a soñar otra vez en mi viejo San Juan. Exhibit A. Puerto Ricans will sing along to En Mi Viejo San Juan. The nostalgia is real, the push and pull is real. And again, Puerto Rican identity, Puerto Ricans are very in tune to Puerto Ricans who do well, and especially Puerto Ricans who make it in the United States. Because while West Side Story put us on the map, I think I would challenge you to say, like if we look at, anyone who that is? Roberto Clemente, right? Mark Anthony, right? J-Lo, you have to admit, reinvented beauty with that superb behind. Lin-Manuel Miranda, Sonia freaking Sotomayor, right? Is Puerto Rican. Puerto Ricans are enormously proud of people who make it big here. And if there's one takeaway that you might say from this is I think it's important to note that Puerto Rico, yes, is very, very, United States figures very, very important in Puerto Rican culture. We are very, very tied to the United States. But it is very much a symbiotic relationship. I think it's interesting that these Puerto Ricans people know as in popular culture. And it seems like Puerto Rico, this very small island, seems to play an outsized role in the cultural imagination of this country, of the United States. And why would that be? And it makes us incredibly proud. And you might, at the end of this presentation, hear me and think, God, this guy is talking about Puerto Rico, but really, all he's really talking about the United States. And you may come to the inexorable conclusion, as I do, that Puerto Rico, without the United States, is not Puerto Rico, but the opposite is also true. Smoke on your pipe and put that in. Thank you.